League Classic launches in 3 days. Old runes, old masteries, old client feel, the whole thing. And a lot of people are going to queue expecting a nostalgia trip. Same champions, just older kits. But some champions might be completely different than what you remember. So before Classic drops, let's answer a simple question. Who was Evelynn in Old League? Evelynn launched in October of 2009 as one of the original 40 champions. Her entire identity fell under one ideology. You cannot see her coming. Her original passive, Determined Killer, was quite strong, allowing her to take 50% of damage from minions in the early game, and that's a massive buff to have, which allowed her to be a strong laner. Hate Spike is what it always has been, just forming a straight line coming out of Evelynn, forming damage with a low cooldown. But Shadow Walk, the passive that we know today, well, that used to work as a toggle. Stand still out of combat for a little over a second and she'd fade into full-on invisibility. Not camouflage, not visible up close, gone. And no level requirement either, so at level 1, Evelynn could just vanish the second the game started. Landing an attack or a spell would break the stealth and slow the target by up to 50% before she can step back and then disappear again. Ravage is the same swipe that it always has been, but in this iteration of her, it had a 100% AP ratio and would shred armor and magic resist. Her old ultimate was called Malice and Spite, which came with a passive, which she would heal off of an assist, and I'm assuming kills as well. And then an active that would give her movement speed and attack speed for 10 seconds. If she got a kill or an assist though in those 10 seconds, Malice and Spite would refresh completely. So you had a 50% damage off of minions, a 50% slow, and heavy armor magic resist shred on her E, and a refreshing attack speed and movement speed buff on her ult. Needless to say, Evelynn was a force to be reckoned with back then. And here's a part that people don't remember. She wasn't locked into the jungle. If you go back and look at guides from this era, generally you'll see her built two completely different ways. One version is a mid laner who roamed constantly, ganking lanes and taking advantage of her toggled invisibility. The other is actually a jungler running Wriggle's Lantern, which was the actual jungle item back then and not a smite chit. Mid-roam Evelynn might honestly be more common early on than jungle Evelynn, and that's kind of the opposite of how it's viewed today. But itemization tells the story too. Deathfire Grasp was the item of choice, an active item that hit for 15% of a target's max health and then amplified all magic damage they took by 20% for a few seconds. You'd appear out of nowhere, pop Deathfire Grasp, follow up with the rest of your kit, and then more often than not, you definitely got yourself a kill. Milady was another staple, an on-hit magic damage item because old Evelynn typically enjoyed auto-attacking in between her abilities. And then there was the infamous Sunfire Cape strategy. Sunfire Cape is an item that gives you an aura of fire around you, allowing you to passively burn enemies. However, Sunfire Cape's burn was attributed to the item itself and not Evelynn as the source of damage. That meant that she could stand invisible next to an enemy or an entire enemy jungle camp and just cook them with the aura of Sunfire Cape without even breaking her own stealth. People used to stack these all the time on her back then before Riot went ahead and patched the interaction. This is the rework almost nobody remembers happened. Not because it got overshadowed, but more so because of timing. Season 2 into Season 3 is around the time that League's player base exploded. Millions of new players flooding in who never saw what the original Evelynn had in store for them. So the new quote-unquote camouflage wasn't exactly a change, but it was just what she had always been. There was no before to compare it to. But it's the version that actually invented camouflage as her identity before the word became synonymous with her. Shadow Walk was changed from her toggleable W to her passive, which would camouflage her after being out of combat for a few seconds. This meant that if she got too close to an enemy champion, they would see her. If she walked over a pink ward, it would also reveal her as well. And the same patch, though, did add Dark Frenzy, a self buff giving her bonus movement speed and ghosting for a few seconds to help her close the distance now that permanent invisibility wasn't doing all of the work anymore. Ravage picked up an attack speed bonus on top of his existing nuke and shred, turning it into more of a finishing tool than it used to be. Her ultimate was also changed into Agony's Embrace, which would impale targets in an area, siphoning their damage into a personal shield for Evelynn and slowing them for a massive 80% for an entire 2 seconds. Itemization mostly holds over from Era 1 with a few swaps. Rylai's Crystal Scepter starts showing up more, since the slow synergizes with Hate Spike Poke. Lichbane starts entering the picture as it becomes available and procs off of Ravage, and Deathfire Grasp stays the execute button of choice. But the role did start consolidating, as mid lane Evelynn doesn't exactly disappear overnight, but jungle does become the new dominant way that she gets played, because the whole point of this rework was to close gaps and set up kills rather than pure roam and vanish pressure across the entire map. Now, Riot's reasoning for these changes quite literally falls into stealth is claustrophobic in the way that it makes you play. Morello, Riot Games, Edge Gamers forums on July 29th, 2011. He also argued that permanent stealth gave the stealth player a powerful scouting information, while denying that that same information was given to the enemy team. Opponents had no real way to read or adjust to how a stealth player would operate from game to game. And that's the eve before the version we all actually know, and also the one that will be playable during League Classic's launch. Patch 7.20's rework is the one that is still live today, and you already know what she does. Level 6 stealth, W was changed to a charm, and the rest of her kit pretty much relatively unchanged. Still viable in pro play, still one of the most skill expressive junglers in the game, and still countered by a pink ward, but some things never change. And those are 3 eras. You have true invisibility, camouflage, and now charm. Different kits, different visuals, and different playstyles. But look at what never moved. She's always been the one you don't see coming. Always been the champion built around information you don't have and punishing someone for feeling safe when they haven't dropped a pink ward. Riot may have changed how she does it, but they never changed what she is. And as far as reworks go, it's pretty damn good. All things considered, Riot's done a really good job at keeping her pretty consistent throughout the years, and I'm not sure I'd want it any other way. I'm sure Eve mains have been eating good pretty much since her inception, and I have no doubt that'll continue for the rest of League's history. With that said, this is pretty much the end of the video, and so if you enjoyed, I'd really appreciate it if you left a like, left a little comment, and subscribe. It's free, doesn't take up much time, and it would help me out a lot. As always, thank you so much for watching, and have yourselves a damned